Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all sorts of good stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, he's our very own LeBron James of the airways. He's the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
Wow, I wish I had the kind of season he had this past year, but you know, we're working on it, John. We're working on it. Every year is a championship season, right?
Every year is a championship season. I like that. I got to make that shirt. I love that. Hey, listen, guys, we have a number of things that we're going to talk about here today. We are so glad that you're joining us on this beautiful day as well. Listen, guys, before we get into it, a couple of house cleaning items. First of all, if you haven't done so already, why don't you take a quick second and click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to our YouTube channel, keep you up to date on all the stuff that we've got going on around here. And of course, I want to let you guys know that for the past year, I've been talking about this all month, and I probably will for another month. For this past year, I've been working on putting together a documentary feature called Movie Trailers, A Love Story. And it is now done. It is now out. Thank you to the tens of thousands of you guys who have gone and checked it out. I deeply appreciate it and all the ratings you're giving and the kind words. But listen, if you haven't checked it out yet, it is available internationally, worldwide, wherever you live. You can get it on Vimeo at vimeo.com/on-demand/movie trailers. However, if you happen to live in the US or the UK, it's also available to you as well on Amazon. So you can go on over to Amazon, just search for Movie Trailers, A Love Story, and you will find it there. And again, thank you to all of you who have checked it out. And those of you who are still yet to check it out, I hope you enjoyed as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. All right, guys, listen, this is how today's show is going to go. We're going to take the first half of the show and cover some topics that we've already predetermined. And then we're going to go into the second half of the show where we're going to take your live comments and questions. If you'd like to fire in a live comment or question, you can simply use the tip link that's near the top of the description of this video. You can just click it there or enter it in manually at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it's reasonable. And of course, you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. And all of us involved here with the show, thank you guys very much for your support. All right, guys, with that down, let's get into our main topics today, shall we? And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 whenever you come across a big topic or story you think we should talk about here, going over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number one, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Abraham Salah. And Abraham Salah writes, "Hey, John and Rob." Well, hello there. Watch the documentary. It was great. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. One movie I was anticipating was the reboot of Mortal Kombat. Because of the pandemic, there wasn't any trailer or marketing for the movie. Warner Brothers has just officially put out a release date on the Mortal Kombat reboot, which will be released simultaneously in theaters and HBO Max on April 16th, 2021. What are your thoughts? Thanks. All right, man. Thanks a lot for sending that in. And yes, there is finally now word. We have an official release date for Mortal Kombat. It is coming out on April 16th, which is really not that far away, kind of heralding that. This comes to us from Variety. Mortal Kombat, a live-action adaptation of the popular video game, was originally set for January 15th, 2021, and will now open on April 16th, 2021. Reminiscence, that's a Hugh Jackman film, which was initially slated for mid-April, was removed from the studio's calendar. That's probably a topic for another time. The animated Tom and Jerry, who cares, remake was moved up a week and will debut on February 26, 2021. That's my birthday, by the way, instead of March 5th. All three films, along with the rest of Warner Brothers' 2021 slate, will premiere on HBO Max on the same day as their theatrical premieres. All right, so we are now in a spot where we've got a release date. We know when Mortal Kombat is coming out. It is now April 15th. Now, it is interesting that's April because we're in December. So January, February, March, we're 4 months away. So I think what we can probably look forward to here is probably seeing our first bits of promotion and marketing, a teaser, probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, I've got to imagine within the next couple of weeks, we're going to get our first trailer for Mortal Kombat. They finished shooting the thing a while ago, although they did have to go back and do some reshooting on that. Rob, I know the first Mortal Kombat movie is a guilty pleasure. I mean, it's awful. It's so awful. And I love it so much. I love it absolutely so much. You got the Highlanders, Christopher Lambert in there as Lord Raiden, one of the most questionable casting decisions of all time. But whatever, it is a truly awful movie that I truly, truly love. And we've been waiting for something like really great with Mortal Kombat to come out again. They say they're going to go hard R, they're going to have fatalities in this one, all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, Rob, the one thing, I've been a little bit apprehensive about this. You got Lynn is producing it, and that's great, but it is being directed by a first-time director, and it's written by a first-time writer. So that makes me a little apprehensive, a little bit nervous, but still, it is exciting to hear it's got a release date. We'll probably see some marketing soon. Rob, what do you think about the date they selected for it, and where's your overall anticipation for this film right now?
Well, to be honest, John, I feel the same way about this franchise as I feel about, a Goonies remake, and that's not much at all. And I have to say that, look, I love that people love Mortal Kombat. And the first movie, like you said, if it's a pleasure at all, it's very, very guilty. But I've got plenty of guilty pleasures, so I know what that's like. It intrigues me that they've gone with a first-time director and a first-time writer, because that means somewhere along the line, that creative team impressed enough that, there's going to be visual effects involved. This is not like Sex, Lies, and Videotape that takes place in a few rooms and is Soderbergh's breakout movie. This is a movie that's anticipated. This is a movie that's big. This is a movie that has lots of fighting in it. It lives and dies by the fighting. So it intrigues me that they've allowed these guys a shot, which I think is pretty cool. So for that reason alone, I'm actually anticipating seeing it. And I wish them the best. I hope they knock it out of the park, because that's good for all filmmakers. So I have to say I'm kind of intrigued by it. And I want to see it, John. I want to see it when they're releasing it. During this pandemic, do release dates even matter anymore?
Well, they kind of do. And it's one of those things where it's like Mortal Kombat, especially one by first-time director, like even though we got Jeremy Lin, it's James Wan is the producer of it. Sorry. Anyway, even though you got James Wan, there's some apprehension there. In the midst of the pandemic, Rob, we've always said that there are certain movies that feel like natural fits that you could put directly to streaming if you wanted to. And Mortal Kombat feels like one of them. April is still too early. I think hey, we've got light at the end of the tunnel of the pandemic. We got vaccines out there now, but we're not going to have the real significant effect of the vaccines by April. So I think this is probably an okay move. And yeah, listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's a first-time director writer. Do I think this is going to be an Academy Award-winning film? No, but I think it could be a lot of fun. And for that reason, I'm still stoked for it. Question is, guys, what do you think about this? What do you think about the release date? Finally, that we have a date. When do you think we're going to get our first trailer? We're going to learn a lot more about this movie once we do. Jump on down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2, shall we? And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Kyle Arking. And Kyle Arking writes, do you remember when Kathleen Kennedy said about a year ago that Lucasfilm had future plans for Rey, Finn, and Poe? That was longer than a year ago, just so you know. But yes, I do remember that very clearly. They are some of my favorite characters, and I would like to see them again. I enjoyed the Disney investors meeting, but found it kind of odd that none of these characters were mentioned. Do you think that Lucasfilm had decided to move on from these characters, or maybe just not focus on them right now, and instead focus on new characters? Okay, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yes, listen, there were a couple of key things that in this big Disney announcement event that we had the other day that was fantastic. There were a few things notable by their absence that weren't really being discussed, right? One of them was really no discussion about Spider-Man 3. So that was one thing that had a lot of people scratching their heads, but that made sense because it's really more of a Sony thing. Another part of that was missing, though, was, hey, what about this Rian Johnson trilogy you guys keep saying is happening? But we've been telling you guys for ages that ain't going to happen. That Rian Johnson trilogy is not going to happen. But the other one is, there was a point in time a while ago, quite a while ago, that Kathleen Kennedy did indeed talk about the fact that they have future plans for all three of those characters, Rey, Poe, and Finn. However, that was really the last time there was any sort of discussion about that. There really hadn't been any sort of discussion about these characters being used again since that time. Now, as the sequel trilogy progressed, and Rob, you know how I feel about the sequel trilogy. I love the Force Awakens. Love it. I like The Last Jedi with some caveats. There's some things about it I certainly complain about. And I really didn't like the Rise of Skywalker. Did not like that thing at all. But underlying all of that, even though there's a part of the sequel trilogy that I absolutely adore and love, the reality is, at the end of the day, that was a trilogy that had no plan, had no roadmap, and they were just winging it from film to film. And you can get lucky winging it for a while, but eventually it'll always catch up to you. It eventually, just pure winging it without a plan, will catch up to you. And I think Lucasfilm learned a lesson, Rob. You know, we talked about this before. They put out that, what was it called? The High Republic era stuff coming. And they put out that promo video that showed they gathered all these excellent writers to get together on this big retreat, to have this big writer's room, to really sit down and map out what this High Republic is. I think that was Lucasfilm's way of telling us, yeah, we blew it with the sequel trilogy and not coming up with a plan. And we are kind of showing you guys right now that we're not going to make that mistake again. We have a plan now. We're going to plan out everything out. And I think realizing that, and then seeing the reception for the films decrease more and more as the trilogy progressed. And then you started hearing that, you know, who's Moon Knight again? Why am I forgetting? Poe. Who's Poe? Why am I freezing on his name? I'm freezing on the actor's name who's going to be playing Moon Knight.
You're doing it to me. You're ensorceling me.
Why am I suddenly freezing on his name? The guy's playing
Oscar
Moon Knight.
Isaac, dude.
Oscar Isaac. Thank you. Why did I suddenly freeze on Oscar Isaac? Anyway, you know, we heard Oscar Isaac, you know, a while ago doing an interview and saying, you know, that last film was probably his last hurrah. We know that John Boyega isn't really interested in doing Star Wars anymore. I think Daisy Ridley is ready to move on, and I think Lucasfilm was ready to move on from them. Like, Rob, one of the reasons I said before that I don't think we're going to get the Rian Johnson trilogy, and I said this ages ago, but was the fact that what is the point in doing a Rian Johnson trilogy right now? I think Rian Johnson's a tremendous filmmaker. I do. Just go watch Knives Out. But the reality is, by doing a trilogy of Rian Johnson films, you're just inviting more chaos amongst the fandom. You're just inviting more divisiveness amongst the fandom when you don't need it. It's asking for headaches you don't need to have. And I think they realize that same thing when it comes to these characters that started out so strong, in my opinion, but then they, because they had no plan, kind of lost their way. Compounding all of this, we get to the Disney announcement and they make no mention of them. Now, this is the worst kept secret, but I was told recently, Rob, that it was probably back in around March that, like, so we're talking months ago. I was recently told that as long ago as March, they had pretty much decided that they were moving on from those characters and that they were going to do other things moving forward. So I believe, Rob, we'll still see, I think, stories maybe set in this time frame and a little bit moving forward post the First Order. I believe we'll still see other stories told, but I believe stories with these specific characters, they've run their course, they're done, they're moving on to other things, they're building buzz and excitement about other areas of the Star Wars universe. The era of Poe, Rey, and Finn is officially done. Rob, you saw the fact that they didn't make any mention of this. What's your thoughts on this whole situation?
It doesn't surprise me. I feel that while I don't want to diminish anyone's like of those characters, I feel that they just never took hold in the pop culture zeitgeist the way the original trilogy characters did, or even the prequel trilogy characters, which were sort of adjuncts to the original series, the original trilogy. I to be honest, I don't see a reason why we need to follow those characters again. You know, they just didn't grab the world the way that the previous characters did. And yet I understand that for some people, Poe and Finn and Rey are their first experience with Star Wars on the big screen. So they are going to mean a lot to a lot of people. But by the end of Rise of Skywalker, it's like, okay, you know, certainly no one talks about them the way they talk about Grogu.
Baby Yoda. Yeah, again, it's no surprise. And look, again, this is why, Rob, when we talk about this, you know, I am a big fan of Kathleen Kennedy as a producer. She is maybe the best that's ever done it in the history of Hollywood. Steven Spielberg says she's the most gifted producer Hollywood's ever seen. But there is a difference. Just because you're great at one job does not mean you're great at everything else. Just because you're a great singer doesn't mean you make a great electrician. And just because you're a great producer doesn't mean you're necessarily a great studio head. And I, for one, was very happy and excited when I heard that George Lucas had picked her to run Lucasfilm. I thought it was a great choice. On paper, it was a great hire. But as time progressed and we saw all the fallout between her and the directors, that's the part I've been complaining about most for the last couple of years, is the fact that she can't get on the same page with her directors. And then as it became more and more apparent that there was absolutely no roadmap and no plan for this current iteration of Star Wars and the recent trilogy and these characters, you know, you got off to a great start. Fantastic. But starting great doesn't win you the game, and ending strong is what wins you the game. And they couldn't do it because they had no plan. And it just speaks to me more and more about the fact that somebody else needs to step in and take over Lucasfilm. You know, thank Kathy Kennedy for what she's done. Hey, thank Kathy Kennedy that she seems to have learned some lessons, and now she's got them on this new road ahead with Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano, The Acolyte, Rogue Squadron. All these things look and sound great. Fabulous. Thank you for setting that up. But now it's time for somebody else to come in and take us the rest of the way. And I think the fate of these three characters, Rob, is just kind of puts an exclamation point on that about how they kind of dropped the ball there. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this whole thing about Star Wars now moving on from these characters? They're still going to move forward. We got lots of Star Wars coming, 10 series minimum coming. But what do you think of them moving on from these characters? It's too bad. It was off to a great start, but it finishes really weak. What do you guys think? Jump into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Preston Bell. And Preston Bell writes, "Howdy, John and Rob. Hope today finds both of you well. It looks like Chris Pine is set to star in the upcoming movie based on the fantasy role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. Paramount and E1 are producing and distributing it, with Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly directing it. They were supposed to be doing the Flash movie, and they did that fantastic comedy game night that was such a pleasant surprise to me a while ago. Anyway, are directing and writing it. It is now slated for release in May of 2022. Were you ever into D&D? And what do you think about movie adaptation would look like, forgetting about that flopped movie in 2000? Thanks." All right, thanks for sending that in, dude. And was I ever into D&D? I can't reach. I got a big pile of D&D books right over here. I play in a D&D group. My wife plays in several D&D groups. She actually game masters. She's our game master. She's our dungeon master. And she also plays in the official game group for, Hasbro owns them, Wizards of the Coast, and actually plays in the official staff Wizards of the Coast D&D game on a weekly basis. She joins them virtually every week and plays out there. So yes, we're really heavy into role-playing games, very much around here. We like them a lot. And of course, I got my Star Wars. There's my book right there, that blue book. My favorite role-playing game is the Star Wars West End Games D6 system of Star Wars. Anyway, I digress. I get very excited talking about tabletop role-playing games. I just think they're fantastic and tons of fun. Anyway, that being said, yes, for those of you who might have missed it, It looks like Chris Pine. Now, we heard a while ago that they were looking at doing a Dungeons and Dragons movie. Chris Pine is now apparently signed up. Chris Pine, this comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter, is ready to roll some D20s. The actor, who is gearing up to return to the world of superheroes with Wonder Woman 1984, is in talks to star in Paramount and E1's long-gestating, big-budget Dungeons & Dragons movie. Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, the duo behind New Line sleeper hit Game Night. Guys, seriously, if you haven't watched Game Night, it is a riot. Seriously, go check it out. Are set to direct the feature based on the popular fantasy role-playing game, and of course, that comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter. I have always felt like Dungeons & Dragons is a perfect property to bring to the big screen, specifically because there's no specific story for you to tell. There's many, many novelizations and things like that that you could draw from if you want to. But to me, the beauty of Dungeons & Dragons as a world to base a movie on is that it's just a big open playground that talented filmmakers can just walk into and really tell any story that they want to tell within that world. And when you give some really talented filmmakers a sandbox like that to go and play in, some really, really good things to come out of that. Now, as far as Chris Pine goes, you guys know, I think Chris Pine is amazing. He's absolutely amazing. Not only is he just a terrific actor per se, but he's just a great, how do I put this? He's a great ambassador for the industry to be honest with you. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I love watching him and all this stuff. So for an actor like him to sign up for something like this, I think that speaks volumes. I really do. I think it speaks volumes. Now, listen, we all know what happened last time they tried to do a Dungeons and Dragons movie. And that could easily happen again. Like, that movie was awful, and it could easily happen again for sure. But you got filmmakers like that in a playground like this, and you start signing up on-camera talent like this. To me, it sounds great. Rob, I'm not going to lie to you. Obviously, Rob, I'm a little bit predisposed to being excited about this because I am a role player and I enjoy playing these games. But still, I think this sounds terrific and a lot of fun. I don't expect it to be the next Dungeon or the next Lord of the Rings. No. But it doesn't need to be. Make it fun. And I think this could be it. Anyway, Rob, you hear about Chris Pine signing up for Dungeons and Dragons. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, we've had a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and it was fun. And the thing about Dungeons and Dragons is you have to go with the concept of it more than, there's not like some famous storyline you can go adapt, because every time you play, it's different for everybody, depending on who your DM is. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons a lot when I was younger, much younger, actually. That and Traveler and Boot Hill, TSR games. But I like this idea. I think Chris Pine is going to bring the right tone to this project. You know, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be, I don't want it to be goofy, but I want it to be fun. Like, it's not a great comparison, but like Val Kilmer playing Mad Mardigan in Willow, how it was kind of irreverent, and I liked him in that. I would like to see a movie where it's not oppressive. I want it to be fun. You know, I want to see giant castles and dungeons, and I want to see a cadre, an ensemble, you know, a group of all of these different characters, like a fellowship that kick ass. I want to see a lot of fighting. I want to see dragons. I want to see treasure. I want to see power-ups, whatever. That's what I want from this movie. I want somebody to do epic fantasy, but also maybe along the lines of what Conan the Barbarian felt like watching in 1982. Conan kicked ass. I loved it, you know, and I've missed that. Like, I love Lord of the Rings, but I mean, Dungeons and Dragons, you've got a built-in, I guess, a quest element. There's fighting. I want to feel like, I hope it's a hard R, but it's fun. You know, I think it could be great if they get the tone right, because I don't want it to be goofy.
Right. And I think that's where the last movie really fell apart. It just became goofy. It was
goofy.
You know what it was? They approached Dungeons and Dragons, the last one, the way they used to approach comic book films, you know, prior to the X-Men era.
That is exactly right.
Yeah, so you know what? There's just a bunch of nerds and whatever. Just just put the title Dungeons and Dragons on it and make it make it goofy and everybody's going to love it. And that was kind of the approach that they took. I just want to share this. So I had a custom table made. This is how seriously I take my role-playing games. Ann and I had a custom table made. Let me see if I can bring this up here. I should be able to do it. Yes. We had this custom table made specifically so we could play our role-playing games. So that is a 65-inch monitor under the top of our table with a wooden frame around the outside with power outlets under the table so we could plug in our tablets and our laptops and plug in our phones, and we could move our and we can change the maps on the screen as you see it there. Which was an awful lot of fun. And then we could also then use it for, use the game for poker night. So you see that, so when we would have poker night at my place, we could bring up, poker timers and show the antes and all that kind of stuff. It was custom made by a friend of mine. I absolutely love it. But that's how serious we take our role-playing games around here. We actually had this custom table built just so we could do it. Anyway, guys, question for you is, what do you think about this news about Dungeons and Dragons and Chris Pine signing up for it? I'll tell you what, I am all about this. I think this is great. Hopefully they've learned a lot of lessons from the failures of the last one. They can do something a little bit more special with it. Am I going to say that I have super high hopes? No, but when you look at the filmmakers involved, again, I think they're terrific. I'm really sad that we don't get to see the Flash movie they were going to make. Unfortunately, they had clashes with Ezra Miller, and so they departed. But we'll see. I think this could be something fun. What do you guys think? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With all that down and out of the way, let's now move on and start taking your live comments and questions. Once again, if you want to fire in a live comment or question, simply go to the tip link near the top of the description of the video. That's streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show. And of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. With that down, let's get into it here, guys. The first question we're going to take today comes to us from Adam UK Friend, who writes, John, when Tenet was coming out, you mentioned Chris Nolan was getting 20% of first dollar gross, which is the most ridiculous deal ever made in Hollywood. That was a stupid deal for them to make. Anyway, can you explain how that deal works, please? If it made $1 billion, for example, he would get $200 million? How? The cinema gets 50%. By the way, that's simply not true. I don't care who tells you that. It's not true. The cinema does not get 50%. Believe that. I worked with AMC theaters. I was in their corporate offices. They laid out for me how much money they get. It ain't 50%. But at any rate, he would get $200 million. How? The cinemas get 50% and he won't get any of their money. Okay. So basically, and Rob, jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong. The deal that Christopher Nolan signed, no studio will ever sign with another director again. There's no way that deal's ever going to be signed, because you're absolutely right. If that film, in theory, made $1 billion, the first dollar gross means before anything is deducted, he gets to take 20%. In this case, it would have been $200 million off the top. And then the theaters would take their cut. By the way, their cut is first dollar gross as well. And it really wasn't going to leave a lot of room. There really wasn't going to leave any profit margin for them. But it was. Hey, listen, all credit to Chris Nolan. If you can get that deal, you get that deal. But it was a stupid deal for Warner Brothers to sign. I don't care how good Christopher Nolan is. He's one of the best in the world. He ain't worth $200 million. No director, no actor, no whatever is worth $200 million on one film. Anyway, Rob, what did you think about this deal? I mean, obviously you'd love to get this deal, would you not?
Oh, dude, who wouldn't? Look, it's when Hollywood, like I say, John, it ain't show friends, it's show business, like Bob Sugar said and Jerry Maguire, but you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And when you've had films, Inception made almost $1 billion. Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight were $1 billion films. And Dunkirk outgrossed all expectations. When that happens, you capitalize. And unfortunately, Tenet didn't do what they wanted it to do, so I don't think he'll get that for his next movie. But you got to get what you can, when you can, how you can. And I admire anyone who can do that. So good on him. I don't necessarily think it's good for the business, though, because, make it a performance bump. You know, when your movie grosses a certain amount of money, then you get a performance bump. But up front, it makes it risky. And when you're already spending $200 million on a movie, it seems a little excessive getting that kind of a deal because it puts the financiers in a more difficult position. And I think it should be a partnership. But you know what? That's the deal they signed. Then that's what they have to pay.
It is. So, hey, listen, full marks to Christopher Nolan for getting the deal. If you get that offer that deal, you take it. It just Warner Brothers shouldn't have agreed to it in the first place. All right, next up, Adam UK friend also writes, my completely uneducated guess would be he gets 20% of Warner Brothers' first dollar gross. No, that's not what first dollar gross means. First dollar gross means first dollar gross. He got 20% right off the top. Right? That's what first dollar gross means. It's right off the top. It's not first dollar net. It's first dollar gross. And that was what made it completely like unbelievable. All right. He Who writes, I remember way back when you wrote The Pride, there was a top tier on Kickstarter where you'd fly anywhere in America with your book and take the patron to lunch. Anyone ever take you up on that? I had one person take me up on that who's actually a personal friend of mine. So there was that one person who was a personal friend of mine. And you know what? They never held me to it. I still owe him that. He's a buddy of mine. You don't know him personally, Rob, but you know of him. But anyway, I still have to take him up on that at some point, I think. That was fun. Thank you for bringing up The Pride. That was a fun thing. The Wakandan Forever writes, hey, John, with the Disney Plus watch along, we got Black Panther news and even Fantastic Four announcement. What upcoming event do you expect X-Men announcements other than Black Panther? That is what I was most excited about. This was one of your best shows, John. Thanks. It wasn't really a show. It was just a watch along. But yeah, again, Rob, it just kind of highlights the fact, like, look, when the Fox Disney announcement was first made, December of 2017, how, like, it's weird to think that it was that long ago. It was 3 years ago. Kevin Feige said, and nobody believed him. Everybody insisted, X-Men are going to be in the next Avengers movie. X-Men are going to be in Infinity War. Oh, remember this one, Rob? You see how the Thanos has 3 marks on his face? That's evidence that Wolverine is going to be in the next X. Remember that? I mean, that was all over the place. There were sources telling websites that, yes, we can tell you that X-Men characters are going to be in this thing. Of course, it never was. Kevin Feige said from day one, listen, I've already got my 5-year plan. I've already got my roadmap for the next 5 years. And that's where we're at. And there's a reason why when he even just mentioned Fantastic Four, it's just getting its first mention now, right? We are years away from Fantastic Four coming out. So I'm not surprised in the least. I would have been shocked if he actually had something to say about X-Men. X-Men are still years away. And so, I'm not surprised they didn't say anything. Were you surprised that they, especially once they said Fantastic Four, were you surprised that they didn't also say something about X-Men? Or are you still expecting to hear that maybe in the coming year?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. I think that there's going to be, I think they have a lot of stuff to figure out with X-Men because X-Men is almost its own, as we saw before, its own universe. You're dealing with hundreds of characters, and how are they going to make that work? I think they still have to really figure that out.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't expect to hear anything about X-Men even in 2021. I mean, maybe we might. It's possible, but I suspect we won't hear anything about X-Men until 2022. But we'll find out. We'll find out for sure. All right, next up, we got the Wakandan Forever rights. Oh, that was Wakandan Forever. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. Next up, Sam Fisher writes, okay, hear me out. Tom Selleck starring as Theodore Roosevelt in a Theodore Roosevelt biopic. He's a great actor, and he does look a lot like him, especially now. He's great in Blue Bloods. Well, Tom Selleck is great. I don't generally do X actor and X roles. One of the criteria that I look for in actors to play a role is never what do they look like. I never worry about that. Unless it's like something that's really, really radical. Like he's playing a guy who had purple skin. Okay, well then find somebody with purple skin. You know what I mean? Unless it's an extreme example, I never care. I find makeup today can make any actor look like somebody if they really need to. So I'm not really worried about that. But my first thing is always talent first. Tom Selleck is a really talented performer, actually. And so if they were to announce it simply based on talent, I'd be down for it. I mean, he's Tom Selleck. I'd be good with it. All right. Regan Crisp writes, hey, John, love your show. Thank you so much, Regan. Since Cineworld opened up an IMAX near me about a year ago, I've been trying to expand and watch more great movies than before. What are some non-franchise films you would suggest that are just must watch in a lifetime? For example, The Shawshank Redemption, Groundhog Day, 12 Angry Men, and Seven are all great movies that I've only just seen within the past year. Thanks, COVID. Your input is greatly appreciated. Keep up the good work and bring on the filthy. All right, man. That's always a good question. One that I always go back to, Rob, one of my top 10 favorite films of all time is Lawrence of Arabia. It's also one that you really need. Not every movie needs to be seen on a big screen, but Lawrence of Arabia is just a different experience when you see it on a big screen than when you don't. And I believe I heard this once. There was a fun little fact about it, that the cinematography in the movie, every camera shot moves from left to right. I've never noticed that. And somebody pointed that out to me before. I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even notice that. But for me, the one I would throw in there, Rob, is Lawrence of Arabia. What one would you throw out if somebody were to ask you that question?
One of my favorite films of all time is a movie called All That Jazz from 1979 that Bob Fosse, who directed Cabaret, one of the great, and the great Anne Reinking, who was in that film, who choreographed or was in Chicago. She passed away the other day. But one of my favorite films of all time. It's a biopic. I mean, it's basically a Ramona Clef that Fosse's making about his own life. It's a great fantasy film. It's a great rumination on mortality. It's about artwork. It's about making movies. You know, what is it? It's about show business. It's about so many different things. And in my mind, in my life, it's been the most. I think if you ask me what movie influenced me the most, I think it would be All That Jazz. I heard David Fincher said it was his favorite movie once.
He did. I heard him say that before. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, Regan. All right. John our Goat Rodriguez writes, hey, John, I want to say that your documentary was amazing and inspiring. Oh, thank you so much, man. Thank you for checking it out. It got me off my ass to finally make a movie to submit to the Master of Fun and Wonders Film Festival. Thanks for the inspiration. There you go. Hey, listen, seriously, we are always trying to encourage. I think film fans, all film fans, should get involved and make their own little movie, short film, whatever, because it enhances your fandom. It gives you a better appreciation for the work that filmmakers do. And it's just fun and satisfying to tell your own little story. So I think that's great. And it's equally awesome that Rob has this little film festival that he's been putting together. You guys have been sending in a bunch of stuff. Rob, have you received John R. Goat Rodriguez's submission yet?
You know, I better have, because the cutoff is at 11:59 today.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know. I've got like 80 movies total that I'm going through, but there is the two movies debuted today. One debuts at noon while we're on still, a pretty interesting science fiction movie. But I'm sure I have it, and it'll be up this week. They're all going to be up this week.
Excellent. And well done to all of you guys who have been making your own stuff and submitting it in. That is great. All right, next up, John R. Goat Rodriguez writes, John, I just heard a rumor now. Before I say it, I don't think the sources are reliable, but what I heard is that Tom Holland could make a cameo as Spider-Man in the upcoming Spider-Man movie. Personally, I don't buy it. It's so funny because I've seen all these memes about, like, was it Yakov Smirnoff in the first Spider-Man movie who played the landlord? Rent? Was that Yakov Smirnoff? If not,
I don't remember. Maybe it was.
Brent? I mean, I'm seeing all these things about so-and-so guys. He took that guy's pizza guy from one of the original movies is coming back in. It is pretty funny seeing all that. Well said, John. All right, next up. Mikey Roberts Meyer Burnett writes, at the beginning of the tragedy, Mando is explaining to Baby Yoda that he will have to give him up because he, Mando, can't raise him. Do you think Baby Yoda will think Mando gave him up? They really pushed that little back and forth. Great show. Well, listen, one of the things that they have done that's been a little ambiguous, Rob, in Mandalorian is what are Baby Yoda's cognitive skills? Because you know, there are times when Mando is saying something very clear to him, and he clearly doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't understand what's going on. But he was able to mentally have a conversation, a backstory conversation with Ahsoka Tano mentally at the same time. So I'm not really sure what their position is on what is the height of his cognitive skills. That said, one of the most interesting things about that episode was, when you think about it, you know, Grogu, he remembers, okay, I'm sitting on this rock. There's Mando standing right there. I'm sitting on this rock. I'm going to try to activate. Okay, he activates it. Next thing he knows, he opens his eyes again and Mando's nowhere to be seen. And now there are all these threats around him who take him. And so is he pissed at Mando for that? Does he think Mando maybe abandoned him? That's a really good dramatic. Rob, how do you think they're going to resolve that? What do you think Baby Yoda's mindset is on that?
I think that Baby Yoda knows what's up. You know, I think Baby Yoda is a lot more savvy and in tune with the Force than we might even know. And I think he knows exactly what's going on. And I think one of the things that I mean, he's had contact with something or somebody. Like, he went into that Jedi temple and blasted out a beacon of Force energy for not an insignificant amount of time. And I think that there's a lot more happening there than we know, John.
I think you're right.
I think he knows exactly where the Mando's heart is.
I think you're right, but we will fight. It is still a really interesting way they set that up, though. All right, Wilson the Volleyball writes, people, I beg you, please take your vaccine when it's available to you. It might be a while before it's available to a lot of people. The longer we resist, the longer it will take for us to get our lives back and get rid of the masks. I'm young and low risk, and what I want most is not to have another year stolen from us. I mean, it's true. You know what? By the way, big congrats out to, what is it, New Zealand and Australia, who like officially announced their countries are like COVID free.
New Zealand, like, yeah.
COVID free. Gone. Isn't it funny when a country will actually band together, do what's necessary and do the work? Now their economy's open. People are back to work. Nobody's worried about that. Isn't it funny what happens when people do the right things? Anyway, big congrats to them. We still have a lot of work to do. Even though the vaccine is coming out now, they're saying that could be the worst months that are still ahead of us. So everybody needs to stay vigilant. All right, Dan Ketchum writes, so, theaters are gasping their last. It's sad that such a huge part of our culture for more than a century will just fade away. The communal experience of the theater will be hard to replace. Yeah, no, it is. It's unfortunate. Look, things happen. I still think, though, what Disney did the other day has, in essence, given a ray of hope to it. Like, if theaters know that there is a point in time coming when big movies will be released in theaters again, and if lawsuits from Legendary and the DGA and whatever can persuade Warner Brothers to take a number of their films that are coming later in the year and convince them to go back to a theatrical model, there might be a chance.
Yeah.
That's as far as I'm willing to go, is to say there might be a chance. I'm still kind of pessimistic on it, but I'm hopeful because the theater going experience, it's just culturally, it's too vital. From a movie making point of view, it's too vital. All the real directors, they make their movies for the theatrical experience. It is still the best way to enjoy a movie. And financially, it just represents too big of a windfall for the big studios. If they do both, and if they do the theatrical model and the streaming model, there's just too much money to be made. But I got to tell you, man, as much as I may say right now, I still think there's a little bit of hope. I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic, Dan, unfortunately. Okay, next up. Heisenberg writes, well, it's time to update the dictionary. Under Mexican warrior, there should be a picture of Brandon Moreno. No kidding. No kidding. His fight against Figueiredo the other night was it is the best flyweight fight I've ever seen in history. That dude and his journey can be made into a movie. Can't wait for the weekend to get here. The fight night card for Saturday is freaking sick. I'm telling you what, that card was unbelievable. That was a fabulous, fabulous card. And that title fight, that's a fight of the year candidate right there. And this dude, Moreno, that dude is a warrior, like a damn warrior. He lost, but he kind of won. You know what I mean? It was a tremendous fight. I can't wait to see them run that back again. I cannot wait to see that rematch. All right, Sebastian Trulio writes, hey, Mr. Aura, because my wife's maiden name is Aura. Now that you are moving to a new place, that's right. Actually, I just sent in my down payment today. That was painful. Woo, that was painful. I've never seen my bank account empty so fast. But yeah, sent in my actual official down payment today on my house, our new house that Ann and I are buying. Now that you are moving into a new place, please consider wiring Ethernet through the walls before moving. It is a bit of an investment, but you will thank yourself later. A bigger house means a less reliable Wi-Fi. Trust me, the struggle is real. Well, I mean, the only place that is really necessary for me to have wired internet is in my office, because I don't trust Wi-Fi to do streaming. I hardwire my computer in to do streaming, and I hardwire in the laptop that I bring Rob in on because I need a good solid, but everything else, Wi-Fi has been more than adequate. I mean, in my house, I've got a Wi-Fi router that is actually really quite powerful, and it should meet all my needs for that. I've never had a problem with my streaming, even in 4K, so it's good. But yeah, and thankfully where my office is going to be, that's where we're going to run the hardwire in. Thankfully, it's not going to be too far from my living room at the same time. All right, Greg Scott Bailey writes, one of two. On the topic of movie news rumors, I get the impression that there are some people who think that their wild idea put into a misleading news report will somehow skew a Kevin Feige into casting who they want, not who Kevin and Marvel wants. Oh, that's absolutely true, Greg. Anyway, I suppose it's a fool's errand to try to figure out the psychology of others, and I'm basing all of this on a feeling as well. I enjoyed Charlie Cox's Daredevil, but it still seems out of left field to me that people want him, Cox, in Spider-Man. Look, I think it's important to understand, Rob, you and I both emphasize this a lot. Like, when a report like Charlie Cox is going to be in the new Spider-Man, which is, at this point, a rumor at best, it's important to understand that, you know, I can't even remember, it's something universe. I can't remember the site that it came from. But I don't have any doubt, to be honest, that the site that is the only site right now to report it, everybody else is just quoting them, that they were told that. I have no doubt that they were told that information. I just have no reason to believe whatever source it was that told them. Because, Rob, I've been told things before. Many times the stuff I get told by certain people turns out to be 100% true. And there are sometimes it doesn't. Case in point, Black Widow. I first found out about the December 10th investors meeting from somebody I know in the industry who told me about that investors meeting was coming and there's going to be big announcements at it. And one of those announcements was going to be that Black Widow was going to Disney Plus. Now, I said on my show, I don't know if that's true, but I believe it. I believe it. It's possible that it's not, but I believe it. That's a great example where, I mean, a lot of what he said was true. There was that investor call. There were a whole bunch of big announcements, but the one they told me specifically about Black Widow is going to be going to Disney Plus, turns out that wasn't true. Or at least it didn't come out to pass. I was told that, but it didn't come out to pass. So I have very little doubt that I don't think this other website is lying to their fans and just making something up. I think they got told. But until one of the legitimate news sites, The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, Entertainment Weekly, on and on, until one of the legitimate news sites runs it, I have no reason to believe whoever their source is over those news outlet sources. Those news outlets have deep relationships and contacts in the industry and in the studios. And if they're not reporting it, and the other side of that coin, Rob, is that if that rumor is true, that say Charlie Cox is going to be in Spider-Man, if that's true, well, guess who's going to find out about that pretty quick? The legitimate news sites. They're going to find out about it pretty quick, and then they will report it. So I don't think it's a matter of, I think maybe there have been times that there have been people who've made up a rumor just to put it out there and get people on their side with a fan casting. Maybe that's happened. I think for the most part, I think better of it though. I think that a lot of these sites, when they report it, they're just reporting legitimately something they have been told. And maybe it works. That's why I keep telling people, Rob, that even when I quote unquote break something, the first thing I say is nobody else should run with this as a story. Because I'm not the Hollywood Reporter. I'm not Variety. I will talk to my fans and to my viewers about what I've been told. And I'll put on that asterisk that I don't know for a fact that this is true, but here's what I've been told. That's why I say other outlets should not run with the story. And I think when other sites, the same thing, other sites that are my size or smaller or whatever, I don't think other outlets should run with those stories until it's actually confirmed by one of the larger legitimate news sources. But that's just my take on that. Rob, what's your kind of whole feeling about all that? And are people just making this stuff up, or how do you feel about it?
Well, I kind of feel the same way. Look, when movies are getting made, these decisions are already happening. It's not like a movie's deep into production and they decide, ooh, let's get Charlie Cox to play Daredevil again. You know, that's not how it works. I mean, they've planned these things because they have to schedule them. You know, they have to talk to talent representation. They have to schedule them. They have to make sure the costume fittings are done. So everybody knows what's going on. I mean, these are planned. So whenever we get scoops, they've already happened. You know, it's already, if the scoops are legitimate, you're just reporting on, well, something that's actually true. But I do feel that a lot of times in our movie punditry space, it's very easy for everybody who's looking to have scoops, and you hear things like, who do you hear them from? I'm always anxious. Like when I hear something that I believe in, it's because I heard it from somebody who's actually working on the project that I know, usually personally. So they'll tell me something, and a lot of times they don't even know that I would be particularly interested in it. You know, like somebody called me up the other day and said, hey, by the way, this is going on, and they had no idea how much I would be interested in hearing that. They just said it, and I'm like, oh, really? Tell me more. You know, and it's information that, because they don't know. There's a lot of people that don't understand that I'm on YouTube and talk about movies or whatever, and I'm like, oh, thanks for the Dune script. Let me do a show on it. You know, I mean, it's so I do think that there's a lot of wishful thinking in our YouTube punditry space where people, and some of it turns out to be true, you know, because some of it is legitimately out. It's something that had already happened, and then people learn about it. Because remember, John, most people, movies are getting made all the time. Well, maybe not during COVID, but say there's no COVID. There's movies that are being made all the time, every day. And movies take 2 years to make. So all of these decisions that we later hear about, like, oh my God, did you hear who's in this movie? I mean, unless it's like Rise of Skywalker, when they decide to make Palpatine come back from the dead, you know, and they tell you, oh, that was the plan all along. Uh-huh. Sure. You know, I can see, because your story structure for the last two movies really supported that argument. But I mean, there is times when stuff like that's goofy, but for the most part, you know, it's already happened. And Spider-Man is deep into production. So it's not like halfway through, you know, into a 3 or 4 month shoot, they're going to be like, hey, let's get Charlie Cox to come back and play Daredevil. That's not how it works.
Yeah. If it's true, it's been set for a while. If it ends up being true. All right. Let's move on here. Jesse writes, my theory with their take on Hayden in Obi-Wan is that he will not be in the Vader suit or in a dream sequence. I think they'll do the trope where the main character has a visual representation of their thoughts and feelings personified as somebody they know. So you're kind of thinking about what was the adopted dad's name? Harry in Dexter? Was it Harry's Law or Harry's Rule? But yeah. But like, because you guys remember Dexter, right? He constantly was talking to his dead adopted father, who laid out the groundworks for him. But it was kind of, so you're suggesting that that's kind of what Anakin's going to be? Maybe. I don't think they can get away with that. I think once they announce to fans that Hayden Christensen's coming back for the Obi-Wan series, anything short of Obi-Wan and Vader having another lightsaber fight is not going to fly with those fans, like at all. They just set themselves up to have fans really pissed at them if that doesn't happen. So I think that's a really interesting theory, Jesse, but I don't think that's the way they're going to go. But we'll find out. We'll find out. You could be onto something. Yusuf writes, man, I feel bad for Tony Ferguson. Yeah, he's worked so hard, and now it looks like he's never going to be a title holder. I wasn't convinced he'd beat Khabib before. He was not going to beat Khabib. Okay, there's not a person walking on the face of the earth who's going to beat Khabib. Okay, and after this weekend, I'll never be. Do you think Charles gets the title over Conor and Gaethje? Man, I'll tell you what, Oliveira, he's been on my radar for a long time as somebody who's really good, but I always thought he would kind of become a gatekeeper. But in the last 2 years, he has just elevated. We're talking about an MMA fighter, for those of you who don't know. He has just elevated. I mean, listen, I thought he had a chance against Ferguson. I did not think he would completely and utterly dominate Ferguson, both on the feet and obviously on the ground. And Oliveira obviously is the all-time record holder for most submissions in the UFC. He is whatever. I still don't think he can beat a Gaethje. Now, I don't think any of the remaining contenders can beat Justin Gaethje. I think Justin Gaethje is going to be the next champion once he gets his next shot. Like, he might not get the first shot at it, but as soon as he does, I believe he'll be the next champion. But Oliveira is in that race now. He's absolutely in that race. Michael Getz writes, "Hey, John, been watching since AMC Closet days. Thanks, man. I know it's just a rumor as of now, but what do you think about Daredevil joining Spider-Man 3? How possible is it? And would you be excited if it did happen?" I mean, I honestly don't know. It's one of these things that it's like, there's literally 15 to 20 of these types of rumors that come up every day, and we can waste a lot of our breath talking about them. I'd rather wait to see if there's any legitimacy to it. As of right now, to me, it's not legitimate. That doesn't mean it can't become legitimate pretty soon. Again, if it's real and if it's true, one of the major news trades will report on it. And when it does, then we can give full credit to the first place that broke it. And then we can actually dive into and spend some real time talking about it. To me, this character is going to be here, that character is going to be there. It's all fluff. It's all a matter of, is the movie any good? That's the only thing that matters. Is the movie good? Is the story good? Is this just a character that's going to be forced in there for pure fan service? Or is there actually really a functional method to it? Like, honestly, Rob, to me, the notion of you bring in Daredevil so he can be Peter's lawyer. First of all, we don't even know if Peter needs a lawyer in this movie. Right. I mean, how many times has the MCU set up something and then the next movie starts, it's like, oh yeah, we dealt with that issue. Now we just move on with a new movie. Right? I mean, remember Tony at the end of Iron Man 3? I'm not Iron Man anymore. I'm taking out the arc reactor. Next time we saw Tony, oh, he's just flying around as Iron Man. And it's like, didn't we have to resolve that? Nah, we just took care of that off camera. I mean, so number one, we don't even know if Peter needs a lawyer. And if he does, isn't the logical thing to do She-Hulk? I mean, you've got She-Hulk coming into the MCU. She's a lawyer. I mean, isn't that the more logical thing to do? So I don't know. Listen, I love Charlie Cox. I just rewatched Stardust, which is the new Princess Bride. I love Stardust and I love Charlie Cox in it. But I mean, look, I'll obviously be interested, but this is Spider-Man's movie. It's already kind of full. Is it just going to be for some cheap fan service? You've already got a lawyer character in there and that's what you're looking for. So I don't know. Again, I'll give it more thought once it becomes legitimate. Once this news becomes legitimate, if it ever does, I'll give it some more thought. But Rob, what's your first off the top of your head kind of reaction to that?
Well, I feel the same way you do. And by the way, bringing up She-Hulk, that is the more obvious way to go. I mean, they're talking about how we're gonna see Hulk in that show. So Spider-Man knows Hulk, you know, maybe I just think that would be much more. And remember also that Spider-Man is, John, it's a Sony movie. Marvel's assisting, but it's a Sony film and they kind of oversee it with Kevin Feige's help. So would Sony want to do that? You know?
Yeah, it's a good point. And by the way, are they going to say, if they do now cross over that Daredevil, which I don't think they can unless they make a specific deal with Netflix in order to do it. But if they wanted to bring in that iteration of Daredevil, what are they going to say? Oh yeah, see, what happened is Cottonmouth got bit by a vampire and Cottonmouth is Blade now. Yeah. It's like, oh, great, Blade's in the MCU. Wait a minute. Isn't that Cottonmouth? Didn't we already see him in the MCU?
And then, of course, then you've got Elektra and you've got Power Man and Iron Fist and you've got Jessica Jones. And then the question's like, well, where are they? Where are the Defenders?
And those would be natural questions asked. And you know what? They will be questions people will naturally ask if we get to this point that this rumor is ever legitimized. If the rumor gets legitimized, we'll spend a lot more time talking about it for sure. But at this point, not too much reason to talk about it too much longer. All right, Greg Scott Bailey writes in, tips in $20. Thank you, Greg, for supporting the channel on that level, man. We appreciate that, dude. He writes, John, I remember your first few months doing this show officially, and you were telling people I'd like to keep it to 30, maybe 45 minutes. I was thinking about this the other day. That didn't last long as you went to that wonderful 2-hour format we have today. Much love to you and the community. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, Rob, about how like when I was first starting the John Campea Show, my thought was 30 to 45 minute episodes. But that's just impossible. We go 2 hours now. And we still don't get through all the topics that everybody wants to send in. And it's great. And you know what? It just really works. The 2-hour format just seems to work. And a lot, daily radio talk shows will go 2 hours a day, some 3. A lot of the radio sports shows I would listen to go 2 to 3 hours. So, but you're right, Greg. It is a far cry from where we originally kind of intended it to be. All right, Mr. D writes, London just got put on tier 3 lockdown, meaning cinemas have to close again. Yeah, I heard about that. They've barely been reopened a month. Annoyingly, Wonder Woman 84 was due to open here on Wednesday. Now we have no options. Sky said they might get it PVOD in late January, but will cost £20, $27 US. Yeah, I mean, again, COVID just rears its ugly head. There are bigger problems, obviously, in the world than what movies we get to see and when. COVID is obviously causing much, much bigger problems than that. But here on this show, that's the little box we are here to talk about, is the world of entertainment. And so we often reference the effects of COVID in terms of how it affects this one little box, but we are very cognizant of it causing much bigger problems for other people outside of that box. But that is one of those consequences, MD. I'm sure they will work out a way. Listen, wherever there's an audience that wants to watch it, they'll figure out a way for you to get it if you're willing to pay for it. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, MD. All right, next up. MD also writes, me again. I guess waiting a month longer for Wonder Woman 84 isn't the end of the world, but it is disappointing that we didn't get a similar same-day plan the US got. Did they look into international markets' current states, because a lot of Europe is in the same situation? It comes down to the same thing we've talked about before, right? Rolling out a broadcast service that, even though this is on the internet, it's still a broadcast service. Rolling out a broadcast service into international markets is extremely complicated, extremely tricky, and there's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross and deals that have to be made and licenses that has to be secured and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure they consider that. Listen, HBO Max wants to be available everywhere in the world, but Disney Plus isn't, and HBO Max isn't. They're working on rolling things out, so hopefully they'll get to that point someday soon, MD. All right, next up, RPG with DBJ writes, for a positive spin, could streaming be the Blumhouseification of the visual medium? Meaning, for pocket change, can an up-and-coming director turn trash into treasure under these various streaming brands? Yes, but I would argue, Rob, that those types of conditions have existed for a long time. We've seen a lot of movies like, say, Moonlight, right? This little darling movie made for an extremely small budget. I mean, small budget by Hollywood standards, not by mine, but made for extremely small budget, find an audience, win an Academy Award for Best Picture of the Year. I mean, I would suggest that these sorts of possibilities have been there for a long time. The problem, though, that I see, Rob, whereas some people will say, going streaming means all these little films can get discovered. No, it means all these little films can get buried. In doing the documentary, one of the things that we didn't put in the documentary was I talked to a buddy of mine who's actually like one of the producers of The Raid, or as you would call it, Rob, The Rad. And we're talking about independent film and whether or not, like, I had this assumption that the internet era and like YouTube and stuff like that balanced the playing field for, when some little independent film now wants to put out a trailer, they don't have to spend millions of dollars to get the trailers played in theaters and in front of audiences. They can just put it online. And one of the things they told me was it's actually the opposite. He said, we put our trailers online for a lot of our other smaller projects and they just get buried. It's impossible to discover them. It's hard to find them. I mean, how many movies Rob, how many times on this show have we talked about somebody brings up some little project or little show or little movie that's on Netflix and we're like, never heard of it. Because Netflix doesn't promote it, it gets buried underneath it. So I think the Blumhouse effect proves that as wide release model is what made the Blumhouse experiment work so well. I don't know, Rob, what's your take on that?
No, I completely agree. As somebody who I have an independent film that I produced and edited and post supervised and was the special effects producer, coming out doing a festival run in February. And I also finished recutting a trailer for it. And it's like the only people that are going to promote Tango Shalom. That's right, Tango Shalom. My grandmother would have been proud that it's going to be in the Boca Raton Jewish Film Festival, actually playing on my birthday on May 15th of 2021. Unfortunately, it's virtual. But you know, if you don't have a huge marketing budget behind you to put it on all the big sites, you're just throwing it up on YouTube and putting it anywhere you can get it. And it does get buried because no one's looking for those kinds of things. Algorithms have to pick it up. I mean, it's almost like if a tree falls in the woods, will anyone hear it? Does it make a noise? Well, if you upload your independent trailer to the web, will anyone care? Will anyone see it? And the only way you can make it work is if you have some kind of a platform. John, I mean, you had a great trailer for Movie Trailers A Love Story, and you've got a platform to promote it on, which is great. Most people don't. You know, independent filmmakers, the great thing about doing YouTube and having a YouTube presence is that you have a built-in audience that you can go to and say, hey, look, and hopefully those people will share it and talk about it. And other than that, we have a worldwide communications network, but if you don't have anybody helping you, it's fairly useless. You gotta have that juice.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. Next up is Jake Smith, who writes, thanks so much, John, for recommending Kim's Convenience. In love with the show. I love Kim's Convenience because Simu Liu, who's one of the stars of the show, he's going to be our Shang-Chi in the MCU. Mr. Kim is one of the X-Wing pilots in the Mandalorian now. It's so great. And they just announced the next season is coming back in January, which I'm totally stoked about. I'm glad you're watching it, Jake. Also next, I Got a Stiffy, who writes in $5. I'm telling you, I got to record that song, Rob. I got to write a full song for I Got a Stiffy.
Wow.
And release it as a single. I got to release that as a single. I Got a Stiffy. It's going to totally dominate the charts. You watch.
Well, maybe we can have it be in the beginning of Revenge of the Chicken People as like an opening credit song.
Revenge of the Chicken People. I'm telling you, it's going to win all the Academy Awards. It's going to be everything. All right. Leroy writes, so I believe that Michael B. Jordan will be back as the Black Panther in some form. I don't know how, but I believe he will be. Definitely not Shuri. Again, I don't know what Kevin Feige and the MCU is going to do with Black Panther. I do know what they should not do and what makes absolutely zero sense. And that is the idea of Shuri being the next Black Panther or the Queen of Wakanda. That makes no logical sense according to the rules and logic they have set up in the MCU. Shuri cannot win in a hand-to-hand combat fight. They established that in the movies. She's also not bothered herself with learning how to be a head of state. She wants to be in her lab. And anybody who makes a claim to the throne can be challenged in hand-to-hand combat to either the death or until they yield. And M'Baku, who came this close to fairly besting T'Challa, he came that close to beating T'Challa. If he wants to be king, he's the next king. Ain't nobody's going to be able to beat him. Sure, he's not going to be able to beat him. And he has spent, here's the thing, Rob, M'Baku has spent his life being the king of his tribe. He's an experienced, seasoned leader. He knows Shuri is not any of those things. She is the smartest person in the MCU. Right? That's what Kevin Feige said. She is the smartest person in all of the MCU. She wants to be in her lab. She wants to create all these things. I think that she should have a bigger role, but she should not be the next Black Panther, and she should not be the next Regal of Wakanda, because that's not the way they've set it up. They'd have to be breaking all their own rules, but they might do it anyway. Of course, the Michael B. Jordan thing came from, I thought it would have been very poetic to have Michael B. Jordan recast as T'Challa, but not come back because Killmonger cannot be the Regal of he's considered, he is a traitor to the country. They could never have him back. But I don't know, Rob, what do you think they're going to do?
Honestly, I think that there's something else that's going to happen that is not involving our principal characters. I mean, they're going to obviously be involved, but I think that Wakanda needs a new Black Panther, and I think they're going to bring somebody else in from the outside. Somebody, I don't know who, I don't know what, but I think that that's how they're going to solve it. And that person, we're going to watch their journey, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Somebody who might not even know their birthright, and they have to. I love those stories where characters have to assume the mantle and then live up to that mantle and then test their mettle through a crucible of the plot or whatever they're thrown at, and that's what I think is going to happen. And all of our other characters are already established, so we're going to see the world through their eyes, and all of them are going to react to whatever this is or whoever this person is in different ways.
Yep, there's still a lot of possibilities on the table. All right, Leo S. writes, do you think that Black Panther 2 will be a 3-hour plus runtime movie? No. I mean, we have a lot to cover. Transition from T'Challa, crown another Black Panther, then the main climax and resolution of the movie. Seems like a lot. You could do it all in an hour and a half. I mean, I often go back to the original Star Wars movie, Rob. In the original Star Wars movie, you had to be introduced to the entire galaxy of what Star Wars is, what the Empire is, what the Death Star is, who Darth Vader is. Then you got to meet Luke, Obi-Wan, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca. You have to have the destruction of Alderaan, an attack on a rebel planet, and a big victory at the end. And then they did it all in a relatively modest runtime. You can, if you're a good storyteller, you can tell those stories right. Every movie has a lot they have to get through. That's one of the challenges. That's why I always say I'm more impressed with people who make films than people who make television series. Not because television series aren't magnificent. Of course they are. But when you're making a film, you don't have 4 episodes to build up. When you're making a movie, Rob, you know this as a filmmaker. When you have somebody making a movie, you have to establish your world, introduce all your characters, bring in what the fundamental crisis of the story is going to be, go through the body of it where your protagonists deal with that crisis, and then come into your third act with the resolution of the crisis and the conclusion of the story. And you've got to do it all in 2 hours. You have to do all of that in 2 hours. You don't get 6 episodes to set up somebody or to do whatever. And that's one of the really most impressive things about it. So no, I don't think I don't see any reason why Black Panther 2 has to be 3 hours long. Rob, do you?
No, not at all. I don't think they would make a movie like Black Panther be 2 hours or 3 hours long.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next up, Mark Stern writes, what is a subwoofer? I have a portable movie projector, a Fire Stick, and I have a soundbar. Do I need anything else? It depends on your room. A subwoofer is basically traditionally what it is. And I'm no audio expert, but it's a separate cabinet that all it does is it thumps bass. That's in layman's terms, that's all it does. It thumps your bass.
Well,
but if you're trying to put it into Cole's notes, that's what it does. It thumps out the bass. Do you need to have one? No, you don't need to have one. You don't have to have one. It also depends on the room you're in and all that kind of stuff. You can get sound bars that do a great job just on their own. I have a sound bar that does happen to have an accompanying subwoofer thing. Rob, how would you explain it?
Yeah, I would say basically what a subwoofer does is it delivers low frequency sound information. So yes, when you have a great dance track, the is your subwoofer when it kicks in. But also,
keep doing that. That's just the rest of the show. Keep doing that in the background as I talk. You'll be my soundtrack. Oh my God! You went to Salt and Pepper. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I did. But seriously, so like for instance, there's a lot of time when you go into say an environment, and there's like a low frequency rumble, like the Mines of Moria or something. And your subwoofer will deliver an atmospheric presence, explosions, a low frequency rumble will hit you. So what's really cool about a subwoofer is it works across, it does provide the thumping and the bass. That's basically what it does, is deliver bass, but not just bass, low frequency too, with music, for instance. Instruments, depending on how something is mixed, you'll hear like timpani drums or something, and you'll feel them because of that. And if you have a really killer surround sound system and you've added a subwoofer in, or like John said, we have these these JBL soundbars. Thank you for Connie for JBL's experiential engagement department.
Yes, big thank you to them.
Those JBL, they're Atmos soundbars, and they're pretty effective, especially if you don't have a huge room, but a decent sized room. They do a good job. Those subwoofers, they're really good. I mean, they kick in. So I'm a big fan of subwoofers. I think they really make your home theater system.
Again, a lot will depend on the room you're in, what your needs are, and all that kind of stuff. But if you get, I would say if you have a really good, just plain sound bar, it can meet your needs. But yeah, if you want to get, like Rob is saying, if you want to go up to the next level, it kind of comes in handy. All right, next up. Jason writes, Kim's Convenience Season 5 is premiering January 19th, according to the Twitter. I heard. I could not be more excited. Ann and I were actually laying in bed last night, getting ready to go to bed, and like, Ann had just found out. I didn't realize she didn't know. She goes, Kim's Convenience is coming back in January. And he's like, I know, right? We got all excited. Super pumped about it, Jason. Super pumped about it. All right, Jason also writes, with Sony buying Crunchyroll, a global anime streaming site, does this signal their intention of creating a global streaming service for their content? I don't think it could mean a million things. Rob, of course, you heard about that with the Sony acquiring Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
I do not think, because we've talked a lot about Sony recently about the fact that out of a lot of the major studios, they're one of the ones that doesn't have their own streaming platform. Not really.
Right.
They don't have their own Disney Plus or HBO Max. Could the acquisition of Crunchyroll signal something? I don't know. It could just mean that, listen, Sony is a Japanese company, or is it? No, Samsung's a Korean company. I believe Sony is a Japanese company.
Yes.
That type of content is very big there. It could be as simple as that. Or maybe it's them acquiring one little piece right now, and then they'll add other pieces later and then create one significant major Sony Plus or whatever. At some point, Sony does have to get in the game, whether or not Crunchyroll is that first step or whether it's just an isolated deal. It's hard to say. It could very well just be an isolated deal. Rob, what do you think?
I think that it makes sense that a Japanese company would buy Crunchyroll. You know, I mean, it's distributing anime is different than having an entire streaming service. It's just one element of it. Obviously, Netflix has a big anime presence, so I don't think it necessarily means anything. But it's interesting. I think we should see how it develops.
I agree. We'll keep our eyes on it for sure. SC writes, just when you thought the cast of Don't Look Up couldn't get better. Oh, jeez. Google thought I was talking to us, so all of a sudden my Google. Okay, Google. Stop. Sorry. It's a little hazard. And I probably just triggered a bunch of your Google devices when I said that. Okay. Just when you thought the cast of Don't Look Up couldn't get better, they had Chris Evans. Looks like he's got great things coming post MCU, as well as this movie. He's lined up for Lightyear for Pixar and starring opposite Gosling in Gray Man with the Russo brothers. The Gray Man one is the one I actually found really quite interesting. That's the one I found most interesting. Chris Evans, listen, I've liked Chris Evans for a long time. I remember the first time I met Chris Evans was they did their first public screening of Captain America, the First Avenger at San Diego Comic-Con. And at this theater somewhere around San Diego, they did it there. And I got to be the first guy to interview him about this thing. And we had this terrific talk, and he was so fun. And I've had the opportunity to meet him and talk to him several times since then, but I've just been a fan of this guy for a long time. Even if you go back to his movie, nobody talks about this one movie that him, Idris Elba, I keep forgetting the name of the comedian from Watchmen who was also in Supernatural. He played the dad in Supernatural, and he was Bruce Wayne's father in Batman versus Superman. It's Jeffrey Dean Morgan. That's what it is. Jeffrey Dean Morgan. It's a movie called
Comedian.
Yeah, the comedian. Didn't I say comedian? What did I say? Anyway. They all start, and Zoe Saldana as well. Listen to that cast, right? Chris Evans, Zoe Saldana, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Idris Elba, in this little movie called The Losers. Nobody talks about The Losers. I thought The Losers was a hell of a fun movie. And I remember when I met Chris Evans for the first time to talk about Captain America, all I could do was geek out over The Losers. Because I said, dude, do you mind if I just throw this in there? He said like, what? Like, can I tell you how much I love The Losers? He's like, right? nobody ever talks about the losers. I'm like, dude, I love the losers. And we just sat there for about 5 minutes geeking out over the losers. Anyway, I think Chris Evans is just at the beginning of how big he's going to be. I really do. And I think his post-MCU career, and come on, we all know he's going to be back in the MCU at some point. We all know he is. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, maybe not even in 3 years, but he'll be back. But Rob, where do you see Chris Evans' career going now post-MCU? Do you think it'll grow, or do you think he'll just kind of diminish at this point?
Well, he's a director now too.
Yes, he is.
So I think that obviously I think he's still going to act, because why not? People like him. And I think anybody, look, whenever you make something that's successful, you use that success to parlay it into, you now have the ability to sort of call your own shots, at least for a while. And I think he's really going to be able to decide what is he wants to do. And if he wants to move more into a directing career, I could see him being more of a Ben Affleck character. We now see Ben has clearly left whatever demons he had behind. He's getting a lot more roles. He just finished a Ridley Scott movie. I think that we'll see maybe some of that. He'll become an auteur actor and jump from one to the other. I think he's got a really bright future, and he's a very appealing presence. People like him. I like him. And I hope that we see a lot more of him in different roles.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next up, Superman Steve writes, John, your documentary is literally one of a kind. It really is an absolute brilliant love story. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. I love every single second of it. I was literally glued to my TV, and I love how you put my favorite movie of all time in there, Man of Steel. Well, you knew I was going to slip Man of Steel into it. I mean, come on. Was there ever any doubt that I was going to slip Man of Steel into my own documentary? Of course I was going to slip Man of Steel into it. Anyway, Superman Steve, thank you so much for the kind words, and thanks for checking out my movie, man. I really, really appreciate it. All right, next up. Let's see. Patrick writes, love the documentary. Thank you so much, Patrick. Nice blast from the past with some things I forgot about. Wondering if you had to do anything to clear any of the clips with studios, or does that fall under fair use? All right, I had to work very carefully with a lawyer. Me and my lawyer went very meticulously through every single point of my movie. And fair use is a very misunderstood thing. People just think, well, if I don't charge money for it, I can use it. Nope, that's not true in the least. That's not what fair use is. There are some very specific parameters that you have to meet and criteria you have to meet in order to use a copywritten piece of material under the doctrine of fair use. And one of the biggest and one of the more expensive, Rob, one of the more expensive parts of making my movie was working with lawyers to make sure that we were adequately doing and using all the content that we used in our documentary properly, that we checked off all the boxes to make sure we clearly fell properly under the doctrine of fair use. And so no, I never received any clearances from any of the studios or anything like that. I didn't need to, because the way we used those clips was properly under the heading of fair use. So that's how we got kind of lucky there. But the lawyer part was very expensive. All right, next up. Thanks for writing, Patrick. Colin Wright writes, hey, John, in the coming years as things hopefully return to a new normal, do you think there's a chance Disney will try to buy Columbia Pictures from Sony? I can see them really benefiting from owning Spider-Man, Ghostbusters, and Men in Black rights. The question then becomes, why wouldn't they then just buy back the Spider-Man rights? The reality is right now, and Rob, I don't know how you feel about this. Disney is not a buyer right now. You cannot underestimate the type of financial pressure and weight their purchase of Fox was. That was $72.3 billion. It was literally half of their liquid net value. And Rob, they originally agreed to buy it for $53 billion. And then Comcast came up and started causing a bidding war, and Disney had to spend an additional $20 billion on top. Now, that's money well spent. It's going to pay off for them in the long term. But in the short term, Disney's not in a position right now. They're leveraged. Disney is very, very much leveraged right now. Any money they have to spend, they just need to spend on existing content. And then they'll recoup everything that they did. But right now, I don't see them being as a buyer, as a major buyer of anything like that. Rob, what do you think?
Not anytime soon. And also, as a buyer, they are making all of their own stuff. You know,
Yeah.
they don't have to buy anything. They've got the entire Fox catalog they're going to figure out what to do with that. And look at this investor call. I mean, they're making some of the most popular and lucrative movies and television shows ever. So there's no reason for them to buy anything. Although they do still have divisions like Fox's Searchlight, which is now just Searchlight, which still are going to buy independent films. So they do have that, but I don't see them buying anything anytime soon.
Also, whenever it comes to so-and-so should buy so-and-so, everybody forgets part of that equation has to be the other side is looking to sell it. Right. And I don't think Sony is looking to sell Columbia. Listen, there was a time when they were looking at selling off a bunch of things, but a couple of years ago, a brand new CEO took over Sony. And that new CEO is all about the movies. That new CEO of Sony loves the movies and loves their movie divisions. So if there was going to be any entertaining of selling off Columbia and whatever, it would be expensive. It would be above market value. They would have to spend above market value. So yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon. All right, Senator Bale Organa writes, hey, John, just realized that we're getting Spielberg and Scorsese film in the next year. Probably prestige films, West Side Story and Leo and De Niro's Flower Moon movie, which is going to go right to Apple Plus, apparently. Which are you more excited about? Also, a Coen Brothers Macbeth with Denzel. Hope to catch these in theaters. Well, listen, my all-time favorite filmmaker is Steven Spielberg. But I would be lying. And by the way, Flower Moon is going to do theatrical first and then go to, if there are theaters around, it's going to be theatrical first and then go to Apple Plus. But Spielberg is my number one alt. I think he's the greatest filmmaker of all time. But I am more interested in, what is it, Children of the Flower Moon? Is that what I can't remember the full title of it.
Yeah,
I'm more interested in that one than I am about West Side Story. I'm not a big West Side Story guy. So even though Spielberg is my favorite all time, I have to go with Children of the Flower Moon. Rob, which one are you looking forward to more?
Anything that Scorsese does, he is to me my favorite filmmaker working today. I mean, him and Fincher, really, and I have to say that. And I mean, they want to make a $200 million Western about stealing. I don't even know. I'm in. I can't wait to see this movie.
All right. Next up, Majestic Music writes, I like that name, writes, hi, first time tipper, long time viewer. Thank you so much, Majestic, for being around. Since before AMC, I think that Bob Odenkirk is in the John Wick universe. I could have sworn I saw the gold coins in the trailer. Rob, we were talking the other day about that new trailer for Nobody, which obviously looks like a John Wick ripoff, and that's because it's written by the guy who wrote the John Wick films and being produced by one of the directors of the John Wick films.
So what?
The coins, those bars, I couldn't tell if they were the same ones, though. We discussed on my show the other day that maybe there's a possibility they're the same universe, but I'll be honest with you, off the top of my head, I can't even remember if they're if Nobody is Lionsgate. Is it Lionsgate or is it another studio? I don't know, because if it's another studio, it's not in the same universe as John Wick. I can't remember. Rob, just quick, what did you think about that Nobody trailer? And do you think there's any chance it's in the same universe as John? Again, I just don't know if it was from the same studio or not. I can't remember.
Dude, all I can tell you is that when I'm watching that trailer, there's a scene on a city. You watch Odenkirk playing this like mild-mannered, beleaguered guy. He's having a bad day, and then he's taking public transportation home, and there's like some bad dudes on the public transportation that suddenly notice him, and then he unleashes on them. And I literally went, yes. I mean, I can't wait. I mean, this is the kind of movie I am a sucker. Like I would watch American Ninja with Michael Dudikoff from Cannon. I love Delta Force. Give me action movies. James Glickenhaus The Exterminator. I love movies like this. And we hadn't had them. John Wick brought them back and made them almost A-list again. And I think it's about time. And Bob Odenkirk is a man who kicks major booty. Hell yes. I'm in.
All right. So just for reference, I'm on Nobody's IMDb page right now. The production companies are listed as 87 North and 82 Films, and the distributor is Universal Pictures. So let me just go over to John Wick, which I do not think are the same companies that did John Wick. So when we go over to John Wick and we look up the company credits, the production companies is Summit Entertainment, and the distribution companies was Lionsgate. Yeah, it was Lionsgate and Warner Home Video. So there doesn't seem to be any connection there, except for, wait a second, 8711. Is that one of the companies that did? Well, okay. There's like 8 production companies listed for John Wick. One is called 8711. One of the production companies for Nobody is called 87 North. Maybe there's a connection there, but the primary production company of John Wick is Summit, and then the distributor is Warner Brothers. The primary thing is 82 Films and Odenkirk Entertainment, and the distributor is Universal Pictures. So it seems unlikely that the universes are connected, but I mean, they're just so similar, Rob. It just feels like the same world. I don't know.
If you didn't say anything, like if you didn't come right out, like you just show these items, like they could just be, no, those are just gold bars or those are just coins of some kind. You don't, the audiences would know.
Yeah.
But you just don't. I think actually it'd be pretty badass if that was the case.
It'd be fun if they did. We'll have to, I'm sure we'll find out soon. Hot Rod Todd writes, Mandalorian Season 2 finale prediction. Final teaser scene shows the Jedi arriving, but their identity is hidden by a hood, and all we see is a mechanical right hand. But is it Luke's or Mace's? Since both lost their right hands, it's perfect for talk until Season 3. This is the one thing, and Rob, this kind of came up, Ann and I were talking about this before. I don't know that you can end on that note. That is too much of a cock tease. Like, because you set up this thing 3 episodes ago where have Baby Yoda call out and another Jedi will come. Okay, great. Then Baby Yoda gets on the stone, sends out a text message to the galaxy. And then to end on something like that, where it's just, we've been waiting now for several episodes to find out who this person might be that shows up, to end on the way it kind of introduced Boba Fett in Season 1, where it's just his boots show up at Fennec's body. But that wasn't the ultimate cliffhanger of the season. Last season of Mandalorian, they ended the story. Din, the Mandalorian, eluded Moff Gideon, got away with Baby Yoda, and he got his new mission, and off he went. That was a conclusion to the season, and then they gave us a little bit of a tease, showing us that Moff Gideon has the Darksaber. That's a great conclusion with a little bit of a tease. It's possible they could do that. It's like, oh, look, who are you? And the camera is just from behind them, and you don't actually see who this... I don't know, man. I think that would be a little bit lowball. I hope they don't do that. What do you think they're going to do?
You know what? I think that we've now got sort of this team together. I don't know if there's going to be a Magnificent Seven-esque kind of a raid on something, but I think they're going to reveal what's going on in terms of what like we saw the Dark Troopers revealed during the season. I think we're going to find out something major in terms of shenanigans that are setting the stage for the rise of the First Order. Maybe something to do with Palpatine, maybe something even to do with Snoke. I don't know, but it's going to be something major.
All right, one more question we'll do with Rob because he's got things he's got to head off and do. John Burtz writes, my wife and I got married today. Well, that's awesome, man. Congratulations to you guys. That's amazing. We love your show and listen to it every day. What are your thoughts on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? What is your favorite character and favorite parts of the movie? Rob, I'll tell you what, I can't remember which is which. Which one is Willy Wonka and which one is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? What's the Johnny Depp one?
That's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay. Oddly enough, okay, this is the funniest thing. I am not, and some people recoil in disgust when I say this, I'm not a big Tim Burton fan. to be honest. Not that he's never made things that I don't like. Yeah, he's made some things I like, but I'm not a big Tim Burton fan, to be honest with you, if I'm being real. What's funny is some of the things that Tim Burton has done that I most appreciate are things that even Tim Burton fans don't like. And one of them is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I love what's the name of the kid who plays Charlie in that one? Because he had worked with Johnny Depp in Finding Neverland before. They worked together in Finding Neverland, and they were great together in that. And I really like that character. And just Charlie, especially the way it's portrayed. But now I got to look up who the name of the kid is. Finding Neverland. I got to find this one. It's one that Depp did with Kate Winslet. But the name of the kid is
Freddie
Highmore. Freddie Highmore. I believe he was Charlie in that. And yeah, so that's what I'll go. Rob, what about you?
Dude, I'm not a fan of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because I
Not
love
many
Willy
people
Wonka.
are.
I love Gene Wilder's performance so much, and I thought that I appreciate that Johnny Depp committed, but I like the fact that in the first movie, Gene Wilder, and I love the books growing up. They're both Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and the Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, but I just thought I liked Gene Wilder's Machiavellian, almost devilish. He's ahead of all of these characters. Whereas the Tim Burton version, Willy Wonka is like a therapy, a head case. He's out of his mind. I didn't dig it, and I wanted to dig it. I just didn't dig it.
He's a little bit of the Mad Hatter.
And I'm like, I didn't like that. I like my Willy Wonka as a Machiavellian, devilish man who's ahead of everybody.
All right, Rob. Thanks for being here today, and especially with us having the later start time today. Where can people find you and all your adventures online?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett or RM Burnett, and you can find me on Twitter at Burnett RM, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
All right, Rob, thanks a lot for being here, and we will talk to you again later, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right, guys, we still have some time here, so let's keep on firing through your live questions. Thanks for sending that in, Hot Rod Todd. All right, next up, where are we at here? We are at, that was just John Burtz. And again, hey, happy wedding day to you guys. That's awesome. Okay, next up, we go to Gabby. And Gabby writes, the only X-Men I could see Marvel bringing back is Evan Peters' Quicksilver. There's a connection with Wanda and all the multiverse stuff, and people like his Quicksilver more than Aaron Taylor Johnson's anyway. I mean, yeah, you could theoretically do that in a way, I suppose, but there's no need to bring him back, right? You can just bring in, you can just do something. You can bring back Aaron Taylor Johnson. You can introduce something else entirely. There's just no need to open that can of worms of introducing the Fox's iteration of the X-Men universe. There's just no way to do that. I agree that if any of them are going to be done, maybe Michael Fassbender as Magneto, or maybe Evan Peters as Quicksilver. That could be, but I think both of those are still very, very unlikely. There's just no need to do it. There's other things they can do, and Kevin Feige generally likes to play in his own playground. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they decide to handle that, Gabby. Next up, Jeff Jones writes, in regards to Vader being in the Obi-Wan show, I can't remember where I heard this, but Obi-Wan has several nightmares about his perceived failure with Anakin, so they can meet and even fight, but it was a dream. I mean, obviously, wherever you heard that from, that's not official. That's not from anybody that's associated with the show. Listen, there are many, many different ways they could approach this. They could physically confront each other in person. It could be a cat and mouse game of Vader hunting down Obi-Wan through the galaxy. Maybe it's something where they meet in like a Force Connect, kind of like what they did in the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, where they can literally encounter each other through the Force over great distances. Maybe they do that. Maybe they introduce that in here. It's something that they used in the movies. Maybe they never encounter each other, although that's unlikely because Ewan McGregor said one of the things he's looking forward to most about doing Obi-Wan is the fact that he gets to work with Hayden Christensen again. So, but there are a lot of options on the table, Jeff, and maybe that's one way they kind of approach it. Let's keep our eyes on it, man. Thanks for sending that in. Gabby writes, if Spider-Man 3 has a scene where we see a glimpse of every Spider-Man throughout the multiverse, they should throw in Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker as a quick gag. I joke, but I actually think it could be cool. Again, I don't want them to get too shticky with it. Like, I don't want them to get too dumb and too ridiculous. Like, as much as you know me, I think the best comic book movie since Logan, the absolute best comic book movie since Logan, was not Infinity War, was not Endgame. I think the best comic book movie since Infinity War or since Logan was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think it's that good. That's how good I think that movie is. And I don't want to see an animated Miles Morales or even, I almost said Ron Johnson, not even a Jake Johnson. By the way, I love Jake Johnson. Just, as a matter of fact, I really do like Jake Johnson. I loved him in New Girl. But I don't want them to get too ridiculous to it where it just becomes a spoof. If they can figure out a cool way to do it with Garfield and Maguire, great, but don't push it. Know where that line is and don't cross it. So I don't know, but who knows? They might just decide to go completely bonkers with it and maybe make it great. All right. Thanks for that, Gabby. Next up, Tony Kalkis writes, if Andrew and Toby are in Spider-Man 3, they would both be different actors playing the same character. So in those universes, would other characters from the MCU, say Tony Stark, be played by another actor as well? Thanks, and watching your movie tonight. Well, thank you for checking out my movie tonight, Tony. I appreciate that. I mean, theoretically, it opens that door, right? Like, traditionally, what we have always assumed as audiences and what TV shows and movies have traditionally done is when there's an alternate universe, then that alternate universe of you looks just like you. I mean, you look at Star Trek and the Mirror Universe. The only difference between Spock in one universe and the other is an evil goatee, right? Otherwise, they look exactly the same. In this multiverse thing, Peter Parker's can look completely different. So who knows? Maybe, I don't know, maybe Adam Sandler is Iron Man in another universe, right? Maybe it looks completely different. That could be the approach they take. Now, however, in the MCU, as they visited the various new timelines that were being created by them traveling around, their doppelgangers all looked exactly like them. So how do they rectify that? I don't know. Maybe it's a question they don't even bother trying to answer, but you bring up a really, really good question, Tony. All right, next up, Norwegian writes, hey, I'm currently listening to the Sandman audiobook on Audible. Nice. While reading along in the comic, it's amazing. I've never tried doing that. I've never tried listening to an audiobook of any kind while also following along with a different medium of that story. That's actually a really cool idea. By the way, with all the voice talent that they've got in that audiobook, I've been actually really thinking about checking out that audiobook myself because I've heard from a few people that's absolutely fantastic, but I love your idea, Norwegian. I might have to try that. All right, next up. And I guarantee you there's probably 100 people that are thinking about doing that now too. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, hey, John, are you planning to rewatch Tenet again after it becomes available on streaming? Yes. I know you were disappointed with the first watch, but I think the movie will benefit from a second watch at home when you can rewatch a few scenes, especially with subtitles. Oh, I absolutely am. By the way, I still like Tenet. Like, don't misunderstand me. I still enjoyed Tenet. I like the movie, but there were also points in the movie that I was very frustrated because even though there are some scenes in Tenet where you as the audience member are not supposed to be able to understand what's being said, there are also scenes in Tenet where we are supposed to be able to understand what's being said, and we just couldn't because of audio levels, mumbled dialogue, different things that have kind of been hallmarks of Christopher Nolan projects before. So yes, I am absolutely planning on watching it again, and absolutely planning on watching it again with subtitles on. I'm 100% planning on doing that. All right, Tanu writes, over or under 35%. Daredevil is introduced into the MCU with the She-Hulk series as an attorney Jennifer comes across in court. I think it would be interesting if only Matt is a minor side character for the first season, no Daredevil, and use that as a backdoor pilot. Well, first of all, I think it's an under 35% chance that he's even in the MCU. Right? I think it's an under 30. Like there's really no point right now in discussing how they're going to introduce him when there's been no credible evidence right now that he's even in there. There could come credible evidence that could still come. That's not impossible. But right now there's none of the legitimate news sources are verifying this. Certainly none of the studios have verified this. And so it's kind of a fruitless exercise to get into. Now, how are they going to bring him in? Well, there's nothing definitive that says he is coming in. It's just one source. But John, I read it in 5 different websites. Yeah, but if you read those websites, they're all pointing to the same one smaller website that is claiming this. And it could be true. Until we get something more definitive, I don't believe it until that point. It could very well come about. And when it does, if and when it does, then we'll have a lot of time to talk about it. But right now, it just seems kind of like a fruitless exercise to get into, well, what are they now going to do with Matt Murdock? Well, we don't even know that Matt Murdock is actually coming into the universe at this point. So for now, Tanu, what I would have to say is under 35%. Now let's revisit this if later today or next week, the Hollywood Reporter actually confirms this story, or Variety or Entertainment Weekly or whatever. If one of these legitimate news outlets that has real studio connections and all that kind of stuff, if they verify this story, well, then we got a lot more to talk about. And we got to give, and then a lot of credit will have to be given to that one smaller site. I feel bad I can't remember the name of the site, but then a lot more credit will have to be given to that site for breaking it. But as of right now, there's no reason to believe it's actually true yet. Let's see if that changes. All right, next up. GQ writes, Saul Goodman went full John Wick on his trailer. Nobody, what do you think? I loved the trailer. I 100% loved the trailer. I thought it was great. And yes, I understand a lot of people complaining that it just looks like a straight up John Wick ripoff. I get it. It does look like a straight up John Wick ripoff. But it was so fun, I didn't care. It's just so fun, I didn't care. So I really liked it myself. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, John, I know that the whole Star section coming to international Disney Plus subscriptions was confusing. It was confusing. They've cleared it up, but it was confusing at the time. What no one is talking about is the fact that countries outside of the US and Latin America are getting more content, grown-up stuff, and cheaper. Yeah, see, so the way it's kind of working, and it is still a little bit confusing, and I'm still not 100% sure that I have a complete grasp of it, but in the United States, you got Disney Plus, and you've got Hulu. In countries that have Disney Plus but no Hulu, they're going to get a section added to their Disney Plus app called Star that'll carry essentially a lot of stuff that would be on Hulu and even some other things. In countries that do not yet have Disney Plus, they are getting an app called Star Plus that's going to carry a lot of the similar content. So it's a little confusing, but they are finding ways to get content into other countries, and they're going to continue to expand. And at some point, Disney Plus will be everywhere. But you're right, Anas, when they were doing the presentation, I was kind of mixed up on that a little bit. But it's become clearer. They've clarified it a little bit, and I hope this works. I'm really glad they're finding other avenues since they're not ready to put Disney Plus for whatever licensing reasons in certain countries. I'm glad they're finding ways to get their content out there until they are ready to do that. So that's a good thing. Thanks for sending that in, Anonymous. All right, next up, Alan writes, Hey, John and Rob. Can't wait to see Mando and Boba wreck shop on Moff Gideon and some stormtroopers. I hope we get that this Thursday, man. I know we all expect Mando to battle Gideon, but wouldn't Bo-Katan make more sense? Also, when's that next check from Google Ads coming in? Yeah, I no longer get checks from Google Ads, unfortunately. I no longer run a written blog for me to put up Google Ads on, so none of that is coming anytime soon. In a way, yes. Right? That Bo-Katan, since she is the leader of Mandalore, but she needs to get the Darksaber back in order to do that. Yeah, in many ways, narratively, she would be the one to make sense to battle Moff Gideon. But this is not the Bo-Katan show. It's the Mandalorian. And Mandalorian has his own beef with Gideon. Gideon took the child. So while Bo-Katan certainly has her narrative beef with Gideon, Mando's got his own, and this is his show, and now he's got the Beskar spear. So I mean, it seems to all be set up for Mando and with the Beskar spear and Gideon with his Darksaber to have it out, because we've already seen in the Ahsoka Tano episode that the Beskar spear can block lightsabers. Star Wars is always coming up with new things that lightsabers can't cut through all the time. It used to be lightsabers cut through anything. Over the years, more and more things start getting introduced in the Star Wars universe that lightsabers can't cut through. But at any rate, so that's why I think it actually, for these purposes, Mando does make more sense. But I wouldn't be shocked if Bo-Katan shows up there at the end. I cannot believe that this Thursday is the final episode of the season. Unbelievable. All right, Jimmy writes, "Hey, John. Imagine if the MCU, the Thing is played by The Rock. I mean, crazier things have happened. Vin Diesel is Groot for some reason. Yeah, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Dwayne Johnson is already, first of all, you don't need somebody who looks like Dwayne The Rock Johnson to play the Thing, because that's a metamorphosis that happens to his body. He doesn't have to look like that. Like, actually, crap on the old Fantastic Four movies all you want, and I do quite a bit. I liked Michael Chiklis as the Thing. Call me crazy. I kind of liked him as the Thing, even though the movies weren't very good. I liked him as the Thing. So you don't need somebody that looks like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Not to mention, Dwayne The Rock Johnson is balls deep right now in the DCEU. He is Black Adam. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon. But anything is possible, Jimmy. All right, next up. Scott K. writes, 1 of 3. I've been fighting cancer for 2+ years now. Good battle, man. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for a welcome daily distraction. My question is, do you think in the next 5 years we will get live action Star Wars content that will focus on large scale conflict? I think there is a lot of inspiration to draw from Legends, whether it's the Old Republic era, Alaskan conflicts between member states, wars with dominions beyond Republic borders, the various Sith wars, or the New Republic era, the Yuzang Vong invasion. I talk about the Yuzang Vong invasion a lot. Star Wars is my favorite fictional universe, but I think the rebel underdog trope of the good guys carrying the day via lucky shot, technical flaw, sabotage mission, or gross bad guy incompetence can use a little bit of a rest. Well, I mean, I think the thing that they've got set up right now that offers the biggest promise, Scott, for large-scale conflict seems to be Patty Jenkins's Rogue Squadron, right? If you got Rogue Squadron, they're not, that's not just a spy espionage show, although you can have elements of that for sure. There can be elements of spy espionage in Rogue Squadron, absolutely. But you're making a show about fighter pilots. There should be some large-scale war going on. There should be some big conflict, which is what makes a very interesting question. Where in the timeline does Rogue Squadron actually happen? Everybody just assumes, like me, that it happens in like the Wedge Antilles era, right? And we are totally justified in having that assumption, but it is just an assumption. Remember, Patty Jenkins, she was just interviewed, I believe, by IGN. And she clarified, my Rogue Squadron movie is not based on any of the books or any of the video games. I'm drawing inspiration from those for sure, but they're not based on, this is a new story. So is this a new Republic Rogue Squadron that takes place after the events of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker? Is it a New Republic version of Rogue Squadron that takes place in between the eras of Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens? Is it a Rebellion era Rogue Squadron that takes place during the New Hope era? So we don't even know at this point. At any rate, I think the title that brings about the most promise for that large scale wars. I've been saying this lately, right? Put the war back in Star Wars, right? Kind of like Rogue One did. Put the war back in Star Wars. I think this one has the highest potential for that. Obi-Wan could happen, but obviously this is more of a character story for Obi-Wan. The Acolyte sounds more character driven than anything else. Ahsoka Tano, Rangers of the New Republic, Mando, none of that sounds like big, huge, large scale war kind of stuff. But Rogue Squadron, that could be it. And listen, at some point, I still believe they're going to go to Old Republic. I think they're going to play, I think they're going to play in the High Republic for a while. And that gives us some possibilities. Taika Waititi, we still don't know a lot about Taika Waititi's project. Hell, we still don't know a lot about Kevin Feige's Star Wars project. Remember, Kevin Feige is going to oversee the development of a Star Wars movie. So, I mean, maybe that'll be Old Republic. Maybe it'll be High Republic with big galactic conflict. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. And man, keep up the fight, dude. You know, one of the co-stars of my show, Erin Cummings, who hasn't been on recently because we have new lockdown rules, but Erin Cummings, she had her battle with cancer, and I know she would be sitting here encouraging you if she was here right now. So keep up the battle, man. And we're super privileged and honored that we get to be a part of your day, even if it is just a daily distraction. So thanks for being a part of our community, man. All right, next up, Tyler Frost writes, I think Bryan Cranston found a worthy follow-up to Breaking Bad. His new Showtime show, Your Honor, is an intense drama that hooks you in episode 1. I think people will be talking about this one. I'm not even familiar with it. I'm not a subscriber to Showtime. So there's that. Hold on a second. Bryan Cranston. Let me see this. I'm not even, like I said, I've never even heard of this show. I've never even heard of this show. What's it called? Your Honor TV series. He plays the lead guy. Bryan Cranston stars as a judge. Let me see if I can bring this up here. Bryan Cranston stars as a judge confronting his convictions when his son is involved in a hit and run that embroils an organized crime family. He faces impossible choices and discovers how far a father will go to save his son. All right, sign me up. That sounds good. That sounds really good. I love Bryan Cranston. Like I said, I've never even known this show existed, again, because Showtime is one of the few subscription services that I don't actually subscribe to right now. But that synopsis sounds fantastic, man. Thank you so much, Tyler, for putting that on my radar. I'm going to have to see if I can find a way to check that out. All right, next up, Black Forest writes, if you haven't seen any trailers for it yet, then I would recommend going in cold. It won't take long before you are captivated. What are we talking? Are we talking about is Black Frost also Tyler Frost? Oh yeah, must be. Okay. All right. Well, I just read the synopsis. I will have to try again. I'll have to find a way that I can watch it because I'm not a Showtime subscriber, but for Bryan Cranston, I will find a way. Thanks again for that, man. Tommy Boy writes and tips in $20. Thank you, Tommy Boy, for supporting the channel on that level, man. We appreciate that. Hey, John, happy holidays. Happy holidays to you as well, Tommy Boy. First time, long time. Do you think that although Marvel stated that they would not recast the role of T'Challa for Black Panther 2, do you think they may recast him in a future installment? Not sure how much Coogler's script changed for Black Panther 2. That's an interesting question. You know, at first, I never considered that. But technically speaking, if you want to get into semantics, Kevin Feige never said we will never recast T'Challa. Look, I think what Kevin Feige was implying was that we have decided we are not going to recast T'Challa. However, there is a little crack in the door that maybe they just won't recast T'Challa for this next Black Panther movie, but maybe later on they will. I think that's unlikely, but it could be a slim possibility. You guys know my feelings on this. I think they should recast T'Challa. I think T'Challa is too important of a character. You know, Black Panther wasn't an inspiration for millions of people around the world. T'Challa, the character, was an inspiration to millions of people around the world. I just think it's far too important of a character. And what Chadwick Boseman started was far too important to just let fall to the ground with his passing. I say this all the time. It's the allegory that I use, but I think it's apt. I think all of us as fans and those who make the movies need to say, don't worry about it, Chadwick. We've got your back. We will pick up the baton and keep running the race for you. So look, I respect Kevin Feige extremely, and I respect whatever decision they make regarding the T'Challa character comes from a place of best intentions. I really do. I believe that wholeheartedly, but I disagree with their conclusion. I think the right thing is to recast the character, but we'll see. I don't think they are going to, but you never know. Maybe they did leave that little possibility open, Tommy Boy. I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. Thanks for sending that in, man. All right, guys, just have a couple of minutes left here. Judy was dench as a cat. I like that. Hey there, a question regarding Morbius. I cannot wait to watch Morbius. That trailer was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Do you think it will open in March? Sony is in a pickle not having a streamer, and it's Marvel. What's their move? Do they push Venom's date? Do they make a deal with Disney, or do they do something with PlayStation? Well, it's not Marvel. That's the thing. Marvel has, unlike Spider-Man, where Marvel participates in Spider-Man by being the production company and having Spider-Man in the MCU, Marvel is not involved in any way with Morbius or with Venom. Sony is both the production company and the distributor. Now, maybe they're going to say that they are crossing the streams and saying they're in the MCU, but other than that, in lip service only, Marvel is not actually involved in the making of that movie, except for in very symbolic ways. But not in a practical way like they are with Spider-Man, where Marvel is the production company and Sony is the distributor. With Morbius, Venom, they are both distributor and production company. And you're right, it creates a very interesting dilemma for them. They don't have their own streaming service. I suspect they delay Venom and Morbius, especially now with light at the end of the tunnel, with the vaccine coming, although it's not going to make a major difference in March. So I think they push it a few more months, at least initially. My guess right now is they push it a few more months and they still go theatrical. All right. Last question we're going to do here today, guys, comes to us from Patrick Conway, who writes, how do you think Disney and MGM will go about rebuilding hype for Black Widow and No Time to Die, considering they were both finished their initial marketing campaigns and Widow's second trailer being titled The Final Trailer? Yeah, they're going to have to spend more money. They definitely have to do that. There's something that's working against them and something that's working for them, okay? What's working against them is all the buzz from the initial marketing campaign is now dissipated. It's gone. It's evaporated. Poof. That's what happens to buzz, man. Buzz and hype, it's like morning mist. The sun comes up and it just disappears. That's hype and buzz. So they are going to, unfortunately, have to remount a new marketing push that's going to cost them more money to do and all that kind of stuff, but it's what they need to do. The thing that is working in their favor, though, is that you have film fans right now and audiences that are hungry for new content, hungry for premium content, like No Time to Die, like Black Widow. So yes, they are going to have to remount. They've lost a lot of that buzz and hype. That's because it's dissipated and evaporated into the mist. But there's also a hunger for all this new content. So they'll have to remount a new marketing campaign. Maybe not quite as big as their initial runs, because there is still some leftover, some residual energy there, if you will. But then working on their behalf is that people are going to be ready to jump all over it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. All right, listen, guys. From Wakandan Forever, Ben Rayner, El Postino the Postman, Sam and on. What I'm going to do, guys, is I want to make sure we get all caught up. So I'm going to do a companion video a little bit later today. You sent in these questions. I'm going to get them answered today. So a little bit later, maybe earlier this evening, we're going to have a companion video going up that takes care of all the rest of the questions. Thank you guys for sending them in. I would actually take today's show a little longer, except big exciting day today for me. Today is the day, I mentioned this earlier, the reason today's show launched an hour later than normal is because this morning I had to go to the bank and actually send in my down payment for our new house. Ann and I have, first time we're buying a house. It's our first home that we're buying. We're so excited about this. It took us a long time. We've been trying for about a year and a half to find a home to buy. And we finally found one that we love. That wasn't ridiculously priced. And today I sent in the payment, and in about 20 minutes, I have a notary public coming over to my home for us to sign all the final contracts, and it's a big day for us. So today I can't take the show any longer, but I will come back and we will do a companion video a little bit later today. Guys, thank you so much for making this show a part of your day, and a special thank you to all you guys who did send in those live questions, because number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about, but number two, you supported this channel while you did it. And all of us here are very grateful that you guys make this show possible. So thank you so much for that. Don't forget, we will be back again tomorrow. Me and Robert Meyer Burnett will be on here as well. And a little bit later today, once again, I will put up a companion video to get through more of these comments and questions you guys sent in. Guys, that will do it for me for now. Thanks a lot for being here. Please remember, guys, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is now a vaccine, but we are far from out of this mess. So please still do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for now, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.